Good morning. Welcome to the Sunday service of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Laguna Beach. My name, which is echoing nicely today, my name is Noreen Kukkonen, and I'm very pleased to be your worship associate this morning. The title of our program is The Cultural Landscape of the Acjachemen tribe. Our speaker is Mr. Stephen O'Neill, who will teach us about local landscape that was named by our predecessors, the native people of this area, and tell us some of the stories that go with that naming process. So I'm really looking forward to that, and I think that you will be greatly enlightened this morning. When I was hosting my sister this past week, she and I always share stories of our interesting family. And this refrain from my mother kept coming through my head, and I thought, well, okay, it must be meant to be used this morning. She was from a family that originally, her father, had lived in Nebraska for a short time before coming to Santa Cruz, California, where she was born in 1912, and she passed away after a nice long life in 2002. But they came from Nebraska, and they said funny things that as kids we used to think were the result of her Midwest background. For example, if she was mad at me, she might have said, "I'm gonna paint your wagon." And you don't hear that one very, very much. But I think the one that all of us remember, and that when we say it in jest and other families members are present, it makes everyone crack up. Her favorite saying was, "Land sakes." And that was consternation, surprise, unexpected bliss maybe, but it was a very common kind of saying from her, and it still makes me laugh when I think about it. But it's suitable today. I get to tell you that story. But it's suitable because it gives me an excuse to say land sakes in my introduction. And it was for the sake of the land that our native inhabitants, the Acjachemen, respected and conserved its resources. As we saw in the opening video, the Acjachemen have maintained the same special connection to the natural world from ancient times to today. Their social world and mythology explained what they saw in their California environment and helped them name important places. Mr. O'Neill will speak about how and why local Native Americans, Californians, named their locations and the stories that were associated with them. As the native people honored their landscape, so must we exercise respect and the desire to conserve resources if the world is going to continue in its glory. Thanks to all who contribute to our services and who sustain our fellowship. Our music director, Carol Cole, gives us beautiful melodies. Maybe relatives named Melanie, I'm not sure, but you give us beautiful melodies to enhance our spiritual experience. Don West Jr. and Pam Floodman, Doris Garecki are essential to our ability to be heard and seen. And Paul Bogdan can always be counted on to prepare our church, make coffee. He gets here early, and he comes by here just about every day. He does a lot to keep our space available and comfortable for us. So thank you to him, and thank you to all, and those of you who work behind the scenes for UUFLB. This congregation is open to all who are in accordance with our principles, mission, and vision. We believe in loving our neighbors as ourselves, working for a better world, searching for truth with an open mind, using reason to help us explore religious ideas, and granting everyone the right to choose their own beliefs. Our goals are expressed in our 7 principles that are printed on the back of the schedule for this morning, and they're also on the poster outside and online at UUA.org. If those are your principles, we hope you will join us. We're a welcoming congregation, whoever you are, whomever you love, no matter your age or gender, ancestral or ethnic background, and whatever sincere questions that you bring with you today, whatever has brought you here this morning, we welcome you to our community of mutual caring and serious intent to grow as spiritual and ethical beings. I'm not sure who's on Zoom today, but if we have anybody new on Zoom and they would like to introduce themselves, we'd love to hear you. Well, thank you. The message of today's service is a good reminder of our seventh principle, that of respect for the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part. With this principle, we are in accord with the spiritual teachings of earth-centered traditions, which celebrate the sacred circle of life and instruct us to live in harmony with the rhythms of nature. We have announcements this morning, and the first is that our board meeting, generally on Monday, is being changed to Tuesday, October 17th, on Zoom at 6 p.m., and all are welcome to join that. Also, a slide that Dawn will show us is listing future services. So we have next week, Don West Jr. will continue discussion of principles, and this is our potential new 8th principle. And we look forward to hearing more about that and thinking harder about that 8th principle. On the 29th, we have Reverend Stephanie Etzbach-Dale, who's back for another time with us, and she's been an excellent speaker in the past, as has Dawn. So we have some really wonderful programs. Also on the 5th of November, Michael Esselin, who's been here numerous times. We have some great speakers coming, so we hope everybody will be able to participate, join us. Especially join us here in the building if you can come. We want to have that community with you. So hope to see you. This morning we will light the challenge to symbolize our faith, and Paul has graciously agreed to do that. The chalice is the only symbol that we have in our faith, and it represents the light that we have in our hearts. Thank you, Paul. If you have a candle near you at your home, please light it now if you choose, and join us in that meaningful tradition. Throughout the service this morning, if you're here with us in the building, I invite you, if you wish, to come forward and light a candle in recognition of whatever you are carrying in your heart as you join us for worship this morning. In the words of Reverend Roy T. Bennett in regard to light, he said, "Learn to light a candle in the darkest hours of someone's life. Be the light that helps others see. It is what gives life its deepest significance." Our centering thought today comes from the native Ojibwa tribe. It's a prayer that reads, "Teach us love, compassion, and honor, that we may heal the earth and heal each other." We were probably meant to say that together, so perhaps we could say it again. Please read with me. Teach us love, compassion, and honor, that we may heal the earth and heal each other. I think it's good to hear that out loud and to say it. They're very important tenets that are pertinent today and always here. As another native saying reminds us, this earth is the dust of our ancestors' bones, and her righteousness is perpetuated by our integrity, reverence, and respect. Our opening hymn this morning is number 207, and the words will be on our screen. It's called Earth Was Given as a Garden. So please join in with your best voice. If you're at home, unmute yourself so we can hear you.
Earth was given as a garden, cradle for humanity, tree of life and tree of knowledge, place for our discovery. Here was hope for all your creatures, born of land and sky and sea, all created in your image, all to live in harmony. Show to us again the garden where all life flows fresh and free. Gently guide your sons and daughters into full maturity. Teach us how to trust each other, how to use for good our power, how to touch the earth with reverence, that once more will eat and flower. Bless the earth and all your children, one creation make us whole, interwoven, all connected, planet-wide and inmost soul. Holy Mother, life bestowing, bid our waste and warfare cease. Fill us all with grace o'erflowing. Teach us all to live in peace.
It's a beautiful song, isn't it? The affirmation that we read in unison on Sunday mornings explains why we come together at UUFLB. These are the goals that we believe in and that we aspire to reach. Please unmute your microphone if you're at home and join in the reading. We may not sound in sync, but our shared desire to grow our souls is. May we be reminded
here of
of
our
our
highest aspiration
and
and
inspired
inspired to bring our gifts
love and
of
service.
love and service to the altar of humanity.
May we know once again
May we know once again that
isolated
we are not isolated beings, but connected
and
in
miracle.
mystery and miracle to
This
the universe, to this community, and to
each other.
is a time when we share our joys and sorrows. And the recording stops, so we feel free to express what's in our hearts. Please remember to make your fiscally responsible contribution to keep UUFLB going. It's as much a blessing to be able to give as to receive. We're grateful for all that we have in our lives. We have roofs over our heads, food on the table, so we give. And our combined donations make a heftier fund with which to do good. May we give in love and hope. Paul will pass the collection basket, and please give as you can. If you're at home, on your screen is information about how to donate online or where to send a check if you have paper to send us. So Paul is ready to collect. We can sing our song of gratitude. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. From you together we share, and from this we live.
At UUFLB, we also donate individually to the homeless program in Laguna Canyon. The food given in the name of UUFLB, as well as the management of this effort, is all because of volunteers. Candy, Paul, myself, Pam, I'm forgetting people. Okay, Bruce and John and Phyllis, I think, correct? Have all participated. It does us good. You know, I think it's a little drop in the needs that that facility has, but it's all important, and it's most important to us. So if you are able to share either with a meal component or just some sort of assistance to that program, I'd be happy to connect you to Bruce and John, who manage that so beautifully. At this time in our service, we pause for meditation to prepare for our speaker, Mr. O'Neill. And there is a slide. It's a beautiful slide. Fall colors, which we can still appreciate here, even in Southern California. And they're beautiful to see. At this point, let's relax. Put your feet flatly on the floor, perhaps hold your hands loosely in your lap, and pause, taking a deep breath. Take breath in for a count of 5, perhaps. 5. Hold your breath for 5 and release it. maybe this is a good time to fill your heart and mind with the people who are suffering around the world with the horrors of war, so many today. So let us always remember them. We're fortunate to have as our guest speaker this morning Stephen O'Neill, who has been with us before and greatly enlightened us as to Acjachemen customs and everything we would like to know about the people who preceded us on this land. His wealth of knowledge is based on 30 years of experience as a cultural anthropologist in California. Mr. O'Neill has researched and written on ethnography, archaeology, and history, concentrating on the ethnohistory of Southern California tribal peoples. He has expertise in the use of mission records for the study of population and social networks, and has archaeological experience in excavation and survey, mostly on Native American prehistoric sites. His work appears in numerous professional journals. We're happy to see Stephen O'Neill in our fellowship this morning and welcome him.
Thank you for having me back. Thank you for having me back. I've spoken here 2 other times in the past, and I've always enjoyed being with this congregation and the interest that they have in the indigenous people who have always been here, and not just the past, but they continue to be here into the 21st century. I'm going to let you know that many of the actual paintings, drawings that are on this PowerPoint, like the one here on the front page, and you'll see about 4 others as we move along, are all by L. Frank Manriquez, who is both Acjachemen and Tongva, Juaneño, Gabrielino, from the Southern California region. What I'm talking about this morning and sharing with you is what's called the cultural landscape. And move it forward so you can see. Sorry. When? It did when I first walked up here. There we go. Okay. Yes. So I'm not sure how much of this you can read here or at home, but a cultural landscape is how a group of people see the world around them, the natural world and their social world. It integrates the natural world that they live in, move around in, with their cosmology, how they see the universe, how they see society. And by naming places, you are giving voice to sometimes what happened there, to the natural environment where they live. And so it actually integrates the natural world with the social world. And that's extremely important, especially for indigenous people. That is where they live. And by doing this, they create that there's no gap between them and nature. Basically, I'm going to be talking about what that natural world is, their place names, both villages and topographic place names throughout their territory. And then something that's called a song cycle, which many tribes in Southern California and the Southwest have, people who are related to each other by language and culture, and they all have a version of a song cycle which names places in the landscape. Acjachemen territory is here in southern Orange County, basically from just south of the Santa Ana River, southward to into San Diego County. If you're familiar with Camp Pendleton, it extends onto Camp Pendleton, and it extends east into Riverside County through the Santa Ana Mountains and Lake Elsinore area. I'm going to very quickly go through these different habitats just to show you the diversity of the natural environment here in Orange County. This is not it, but it's just another painting by L. Frank. The ocean environment, which is where it starts. Their environment is not exclusively on the land. It includes the ocean itself. You know, everyone lives on land, but these were also a marine-oriented people with all their western territory along the edge of the Pacific Ocean. And they fished from the beach, they fished from canoes and balsa canoes out into the ocean, and were also had links with the people on Catalina and San Clemente Island. Beaches are both sandy beaches as well as rocky beaches. And just so you know, this is what Dana Point looked like before they built the harbor there. It was a very nice place, so nice that they actually made postcards to send out back in the day. Estuaries where the ocean and the freshwater meet. The land itself. The foothills with the grass plains, with the chaparral, and then into the mountains. This is a map that just shows the area around the Santa Ana River and Aliso Creek. And you can see the number of place names just in that area. We have villages. Some of them are known to us. We have a historical record of them, or they appear in the mission records where people came from them, and we have to know the population and the names. But there are other villages that were here that we don't know what their names are. There are villages here, about 4 of them, where we have an archaeological record showing that there were people living there up to the contact period as the Europeans came in, but we just don't know which names to give to them. There are springs throughout here. There are hills, like Red Hill had a name. The Santa Ana, the San Joaquin Hills along the coast had their name. This shows an idea of just how densely places were known and named to the indigenous people here. Now we're going to go back to the ocean. Marine-oriented place names. In the back bay, Newport Bay, there was Shrowanga, which is named for the juncus grass that grows along the edge of that estuary. Juncus is what the baskets were made out of. At the south end, on Camp Pendleton, there's Panhe, San Mateo Point. That's named for the sea fig, a type of ice plant that grows there and was edible. There are names which we only know now because of the Spanish name that was given to them, where the Spanish knew the Indian name and translated it into Spanish for themselves to use. There are several names like that that we know. Las Canoas, the canoes, that's the point at Gough Island, where the Montage Resort is now. It's not Gough Island itself. It's one of the sets of rocks that go out into the ocean, just to the south of Gough Island. And we know it was the Indian name because the Spanish and Mexicans had no canoes here to use, and that would not be a place that they would launch from. But it is a place that we know Native Americans launched canoes from the village that was there in the past. Piedra de Cargada, Cargo Rock, also a data point. Ilica, that's a name of a cave, actually up inland several miles in San Juan Capistrano. But Isla is a name for black abalone. So they were using marine fish that, resources that they used, naming them for places inland. Alakcha, that's the sea cave at the mouth of Los Alisos Creek. Unfortunately, we do not have a translation for that yet. But that was a known name for a cave that at high tide would be entered by the ocean and was used to leave sacrifices for an ocean spirit. Bolsa de Gangara, that's the Spanish name for the Newport Upper Bay. Gangara is the name of the village along the bluffs overlooking that bay. And so the Spanish used that Indian place name for themselves to use to name that bay. There are other marine-oriented place names. Villages, like the village of Enye, which was in San Clemente, is the word for salt. Actually, and then it turns out that the Gabrielino, about 40 miles to the north, also had their own village named Engue for salt, up around Redondo Beach. Now, just to let you know, salt that they used did not come from the ocean. You know, we take a large amount of water, let it dry out, and collect the salt from the bottom. What the Native Americans did was they used salt grass, which grows in areas that are brackish. Salt grass can live in an area that has a bunch of salt and it won't kill it. What you do is you harvest the grass and you burn those leaves, and the resulting ash is about half salt, and you would use that as a condiment. There are names for the islands off the coast. Pimu for Santa Catalina. Kinki is another name by another tribe for Santa Catalina Island, but it was also the name of a village on the island. Harashna for San Nicolas Island. Momnawish is a term for coastal Indian, but there's also a term, Mompatam, which in another dialect, one Acjachemen, the other one Gabrielino, they use the same root word, mom, for the ocean, but they have a different term for people. So Momnawish and Mompatem are also both terms for sea people. And sea people applies to everyone who lived along the coast. The Chumash in Santa Barbara, the Gabrielino or Tongva in Los Angeles, the Acjachemen and Luiseno on San Diego and Orange County coasts. I hope the people at home, looking at your screen, can read this better than the people here in the congregation. The village names among the Acjachemen people, they all have topographic terms. And sometimes the literal meaning is just representative of the actual meaning of the word behind it. Like we have Washington, D.C., Washington. But we know the background of George Washington that gives a significance to that place name. So there's a literal meaning, and then there's the meaning behind it. Acjachemen itself is a mass of moving things. But in the legend, that mass of moving things was the first people to live there. And it was cold, so they all slept together in a pile. That was the mass of moving things, the people themselves. Putuidum is a term meaning a protruding navel, a sticking out navel. But that was the nickname for Corone, who was the first chief down here, and that was a woman. Now that protruding navel, when she died, she laid down in the middle of the village and turned into a mound of earth. And that's also the protruding navel symbol. Panhe, it said the word means cañada, but we actually know a better translation is for that sea fig. Sauche, a little canyon or gulch. Tove, white clay. Well, the white clay was used as a decorative clay, a decorative painting. It was also used as a protection against the sun. But in the origin stories of the earth, there was the god Wiyat. And he had all of his brothers and sisters who were born on Mother Earth. And they were the only beings here. They were the beings who would become plants and animals and the landscape. But at the beginning, they were brothers and sisters. So what was there to eat? They ate the white clay. It was like the manna that was used in the desert. Uhunga is the name for the arrow foreshaft. But that foreshaft was made out of specific wood, chamise. Tumume, it's the term for a flat bench on the side of the hills. And especially as you drive to the south along the 5 freeway and you come towards San Juan Capistrano and you look on the side, you see steps in the hills. Well, the significance of those to the place name is that it's places like that where the beaver tail cactus, the opuntia cactus, grows. And that was a food. Tahe is the term for arrow point. Alauna means to look up. But what were they looking up at? That village, Alauna, is up Trabuco Creek at the base of Trabuco Mountain. They were looking up to the peak of Trabuco Mountain right behind their village. Sajavit, not sure, but it very much resembles the name of one of the sacred dances that was conducted every year at the morning ceremony. Mokoachum is the word for fleas. Well, in their brush huts, after a year or so, they start to become infested with various insects, including fleas. That's why you can burn them down every year or two and build a new one. By the way, that's another example of the Spanish knowing of the Indian place names and translating it into Spanish and retaining that. If you've ever driven down into San Diego County or across Camp Pendleton, you see Las Pulgas. That's the Spanish word for fleas. Las Pulgas Creek is where the village of Mocoachum was. By the way, the village at the mouth of that creek was Uxme. That's the word for rose. And as the Spanish crossed the creek just up from that village as they were exploring, they saw all the roses. And they named that canyon Las Flores for the roses. So again, another borrowing of the Spanish from the Indian place names that were here, and we retain the Spanish place name. Lukup, it means something bent, something like you take a piece of metal or a bar and bend it. Totpavit, that's a village along the Santa Ana River. Tot is the word for rock. And Niguel, you're very familiar, I'm sure, with Laguna Niguel, Rancho Niguel. That was an Indian place name pretty much where the 5 freeway crosses Los Alisos Creek. That was one of the few place names out here that the Spanish knew, and so they used it to spread larger area beyond that crossing. But Niguel in Spanish, the G is very much pronounced like a W. So it'd be Nahuel, Nahuel. The Indian term is Nuel. It's the word for young woman. And given the location along the creek, that's a good place to hold ceremonies. And it's very likely where the young women's coming of age puberty ceremony was held. And the name just got spread all over central Orange County. Now, one thing that I noticed in this list of villages, there is a traditional list that fortunately a priest, Geronimo Boscana, back in the 1810s, recorded from the Acjachemen people. Now, to him, it was like a historical account. That's how he thought of what he thought it was, of how the tribe started with one village, and then the population grew, and more villages were founded, and he named those villages, he named the original chief of each village and what the name was. What I found was something very interesting. Out of those 15 villages, fully 10, fully 2/3 of them are named for plants. That shows the great importance of plants to the tribe. Most of their food was plant, not animal. Deer were wonderful to have when you could get them, but it's not an everyday thing. So Acjachemen comes from the term for wild pea. And it's very much like the pea that we grow in a vine with all the beautiful colors that we look. Main reason why we grow it now because of the multicolored. The pea here, native, is all purple and grows the peas. Hulve, that's the word for California sagebrush. Tabone on the coast, it was just described as an edible sea plant. Enye, salt, well, we know that the salt actually comes from salt grass. Panhe, for the sea fig. Uhunga, even though the term is actually for the arrow foreshaft. Again, as I mentioned, the foreshaft is made from the chemise bush. Tumume, the flat bench on a hillside, but that's the association with Opuntia cactus. Tepipche, an amaranth, which was used as a food. Achelme is the actual name of the seed of the amaranth. Ushme, as I mentioned, is the term for California rose. So it's showing their orientation toward the plants and the landscape. What I note here is, again, how common and how fully the landscape was named by the Native American people. Most of those names are lost to us. There were such people as anthropologists until about the turn of the last century. And the Juaneño Acjachemen people had been proselytized and brought into the mission starting in the 1770s. And they have a relatively small territory. So everyone from their territory had been brought to the mission by 1810, where they received the instruction and where the Spanish did their best to eradicate their culture and make them forget that and learn something European culture instead. So the fact that we have these many place names still is actually doing pretty good. And one of the things that helped with that is the fact that the mission was founded in San Juan Valley. And up into the 1950s, most of the Juaneño Acjachemen people still lived in San Juan Capistrano. And they were working on the farms and the ranches up that valley and to the north and south of that. So they were still living in their traditional territory and were able to pass down from generation to generation place names in that area where they still lived. There were those names that I mentioned. Most of those villages, half of those villages are in San Juan Valley. There are also various springs. The word for water is Paul. So Pala Sakuna is a spring up Ortega Highway. Paula Petuidum is the spring just a mile up from downtown San Juan Capistrano that provided water to the village of Petuidum. Ilica, as I mentioned, is a name for the black abalone. Weivam is another term that was being used up to the turn of the 20th century for a ceremonial spot across San Juan Creek from the mission. Another example of how this has worked is in the Wolf Valley of Temecula with the Luiseno. They have the 4 villages there, but within a 5-mile stretch of that Wolf Valley, going from Paula in San Diego County up to Temecula in Riverside County, there are 12 topographic place names that were remembered. So this shows the abundance of place names in a small area. There was easily a place name, village, topographic, or having to do with natural resources, probably every quarter mile throughout Southern California. Everywhere was known, everywhere was named. If a hunter was to go out and bring down a deer and they couldn't bring it all back, it was very easy to go back to the village and tell where the rest of that deer was for other people to go out and get it and bring it back. There was no mistaking a location that was named. Let's see. Many have been talking about village names. There are other names, topographic, like Saddleback Peak. Santiago Peak, which is the highest point, was Calalpa. And that comes from the word for wood or wooded. And there was a forest up there before we got hold of the Santa Ana Mountains. Nequa, near Corona, is named for the laurel sumac. Avax is a murieta for the cottonwood. A spring up in the Santa Ana Mountains, just up from Irvine, now the Portola development of Irvine. Watamote, that's the word for black walnut, which grows here. And that's the locational name for that spring. I'm sure you know that throughout this area, elderberry grows everywhere. But therefore, 2 springs are named for the elderberry, which have been retained by the Spanish. Aguaje del Salco and El Sacao. Those are springs on the Rancho Niguel, which would be around, that spring would be around Aliso Viejo. And El Sacao, they're in the Rancho San Joaquin, that's in Irvine, probably pretty close to Barranca. I'm going to finish off here with what's called the song cycles. This was a way that the Native American people in this region remembered place names beyond their immediate area. Their song cycles tell of place names in a wide-ranging cycle, a trail cycle that could go for hundreds of miles. The ones we know best are from the Paiute out in southern Nevada, where if you're going to go hunting or you're going to go trading or just traveling, it's across the desert. And you need to know where the springs are. So by learning and memorizing the song cycle, you know where the springs are in that area. Let's see. Sorry, I'm showing you the ones from the Southern Paiute, the Kuya, and the Acjachemen, all living in the southern area of California and Nevada. With the Paiute, as I said, it's out in the desert. It's called the Salt Songs. But as I said, it primarily shows the springs throughout the desert of Utah, Arizona, and Nevada, so that they could go out there and survive on trips of hundreds of miles. The Cahuilla, who are here primarily in the Coachella Valley of Southern California, but also the San Jacinto Mountains and Santa Rosa Mountains. They have what are called bird songs. So they attach a name of a bird to a location. And there are hundreds of these songs. And again, primarily springs are named in them. And so again, they could go traveling anywhere and do so safely. And by songs, people memorize songs. If you're looking back to what you know, you may have a hard time today reading the book and memorizing a paragraph from a book you just read. But go back to a Beatles song that you learned as a kid. You start to hear that tune, and I bet you can sing that song word for word with the melody that goes with it. Songs are the best way to memorize knowledge, and they continue on for generations, teaching knowledge and passing it on. The bird songs were not sacred to begin with. They were utilitarian. But so much of the Cahuilla religion and traditional knowledge has been lost that the past couple generations of singers, young singers, have started to regard these as a sacred songs because it tells about their culture's past, which they have, not that much remaining. Another interesting thing about those songs, the bird songs though, is that other tribes have adapted them. They've been shared, and now other tribes, some not even speaking a similar language, have adopted bird songs into their repertoire. So they're being preserved that way. What about the Acjachemen? There's only a handful of songs preserved among the Acjachemen, and they were not recorded until the 1930s. There's no song cycle like this known. But you saw from that map earlier on that they are part of the same linguistic group of these other tribes that do have them. And there's more than just the Paiute and the Cahuilla. There are other tribes in the same linguistic group that have similar song cycles with place names. The Acjachemen should have this. Well, after reading Father Boscana off and on for about 20 years, it finally hit me. That list of 15 place names, that list of 15 villages, that's a traditional list. That's not a historic list. Of those 15 villages, 2 of those villages didn't exist when the Spanish arrived. They never show up in the mission records. So that shows that this list was an old one, not contemporary to the mission. I also know from looking at the mission records and where people came, the villages that people came from, there were 2 or 3 other villages that were then very prominent, had ceremonial and political leaders interacting with the Spanish that had large populations that were not on this list of 15 villages. They should have been if it was a contemporary list. So that both pointed to the fact that this is a legendary list, a traditional list. And so I plotted them on a map in the sequence as they appear in the list that was recorded. And I found that they make a progression from the center, from the main village, Acjachemen and Putuidam. They then go down San Juan Creek to the mouth of San Juan Creek. And then they go south to the south to the mouth of San Mateo Creek. And then they go up San Mateo Creek, and they start to cross over inland, starting to reach across San Juan Creek much further inland. Those are with villages that I knew where the places were. So you're seeing a geographic progression, like the progression of place names in the salt songs among the Paiute. Unfortunately, there are 3 villages in that list. I don't know where they are. I can't carry that list, that progression all the way through. However, the very last 2 villages, Alauna and Ushme, represent the northernmost village and the southernmost village. Up in north part of Trabuco Creek, at the south part at San Mateo, at Los Flores Creek. It's like they're capping off their traditional territory, showing the extent of it. And so to me, this is what I've communicated back to the tribe when I just discovered this, so they would know about it, that the Acjachemen did have their own song cycle, just like their relatives to the east, all based on place names and the importance of knowing where you are, where your tribe is in the landscape. And I will end with another painting by L. Frank, which takes us beyond the land and out into the stars, which was also a part of the cultural landscape. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy personally to have an explanation for the word Nigel, because people are very puzzled by that, and it's ever present.
If I might mention, Nigel is the only Native American place name used here in Acjachemen.
Oh, good to know.
LA has probably half a dozen, so we just got
Yeah. Yeah, people do ask that question of me, and so it's interesting to have an answer now. I think we'll all look at our Google Maps a little differently now, thanks to you. Yeah. Our closing hymn this morning is our Blue Boat Home. So if you'd like to rise and join in our favorite UU song, perhaps, certainly mine, Blue Boat Home.
Though below me I feel no motion, standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean, still my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor nor port have I known. Wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Sun, my sail, and moon, my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning o'er the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the lights of the heavens.
we extinguish the chalice as we end our service this morning? Our blessing is a reading 694 from our hymnal. May the love which overcomes all differences, which heals all wounds, which puts to flight all fears, which reconciles all who are separated, be in us and among us, now and always. Thank you, Stephen O'Neill, for the insights you've given us regarding the lands that we live on. We appreciate your presence very much this morning. Now, if we remain standing, we will form a circle and sing, "Let There Be Peace on Earth."
Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. With earth as our mother, we are family. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my solemn vow. To take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Have a lovely day.